Hey everyone, it's Layla Shaver with My RA Lawyer, your favorite compliance nerd. That's right, it's up here, it's official. I'm here to talk to you today about off-channel communications. Yes, I'm sure you've seen the latest round of firms, both BDs, RAs, and commodities firms, being fined by the SEC for failure to maintain accurate books and records specifically related to off-channel communications. So let's get started and talk about what's going on. So why is this happening now of all times, right? So recently we had 26 firms being fined over $390 million related to issues with off-channel communications. So let's start with what is the rule that's triggering all this. Under Rule 204-2, an RA is required to maintain accurate books and records, right? So think about anything that your firm produces is a book and record of the firm. And generally speaking, you're required to archive and then supervise. When we talk about off-channel communications or just communications in general with an RA, we're talking about things like snail mail, what we kind of refer to as correspondence, but also electronic communications, which represent a majority of the communications you're having within your firm. That's emails, text messages, Teams messages, Zoom messages, messages on social media, messages on your website if you have a chat bot or something similar. You're having a lot of communications through and for your RA. So the SEC started in 2021, kind of looking at the different ways in which BDs and RAs were communicating internally and externally. So both internally with team members and externally with clients. What they found was widespread and very long-term deficiencies when it came to archiving communications and supervising those communications. So for example, firms were utilizing text messaging, they were utilizing communication portals or applications that were not pre-approved by the firm. So WhatsApp, messaging apps, things like Snapchat or other forms of communication that simply were not approved by the RAA. These communications can also even just be communications between the executives, the ownership, about what's going on in the firm. It could be communications with clients or other colleagues and advisors in the firm. These communications can be communications that are generated by other applications. So for example, if you utilize a calendaring app and that calendaring app is sending out communications to cell phones or email addresses, these are all the ways in which your firm is communicating internal and externally. The problem is, well, frankly, there's been so much technology that's come out in the last few decades that's really streamlined and made communication easier, more effective, and more efficient. Now more than ever, advisors are using cell phone text messaging apps. They're using applications through vendors like Global Relay or Smarsh to communicate with each other and with their clients. They're also using ways to communicate that aren't approved. And this is what the SEC is referring to as off-channel communications. So what happens with these off-channel communications is that they're not being archived, which is why you're seeing all these record-keeping failures, failure to maintain books and records charges, but it's also the failure to supervise, which is where you're also seeing these charges for failure to have a compliance program that would have found these issues and remediated them. Now, this recent batch of enforcement is a hefty one, right? $390 million in fines. So I'm going to read off what the fines are. Ameriprise, $50 million. Edward Jones, $50 million. LPL, $50 million. Raymond James, $50 million. RBC, $45 million. BNY Mellon, $40 million. TD, $30 million. Osaic, $18 million. Cohen and Company, $16.5 million. Piper Sandler and Co., $14 million. First Trust, $8 million, Apex, $6 million, Truist, $5.5 million, Cetera, $4.5 million, Great Point Capital, $2 million, Hilltop Securities, $1.6 million, Schoenfeld Asset Management, $1.25 million, Haitong International Securities, $400,000. And the two least amount of fines were because they self-reported to the regulators. To give you an idea of the size firm, Schoenfeld, being one of the smallest, has $1.8 billion in assets under management. So over $1 million fine is significant. So don't think that you're too small to fail, or you're too small to be held to the same standards as an Apex, as a Truist, as a Cetera, as some of these larger firms that have incredible compliance infrastructures in place. Now, this is the second big group of firms that was fined this year. Earlier this year, we saw a couple other actions as well. One was a standalone RA that was fined about $6.5 million. And then there was another group of about 11 or more firms that were fined over $80 million for failure to maintain accurate books and records and supervise these off-channel communications. So I'm going to read those fines too. So we had Northwestern Mutual at $16.5 million, Guggenheim is $15 million, Oppenheimer at $12 million, Cambridge at $10 million, Lincoln Financial $8.5 million, US Bancorp $8 million, Huntington $1.25 million. And theirs was the lowest as well because they self-reported. So self-reporting does help. It reduces the fine amount because you became aware of the issue and you're actively working on mitigating it and then letting the regulator know this issue has happened. But what I want you to take from this is that this is just the beginning, and we can continue to expect and see more firms being held responsible for these long-standing books and records violations and these failures to archive and monitor off-channel communications.